we've not gotten into the dirty details of your research in your book about Bernie Sanders. Now, we have learned recently that Bernie Sanders, Mr. Green New Deal himself, has outperformed every other Democratic presidential hopeful in terms of private jet use. And yet he's going to lecture us on the environment and the need for a new Green Deal and eliminating oil and gas and taking over the entire energy sector of our economy. And then we got Elizabeth Warren popping off her private jet. Another hypocrite. But more specifically, for a guy that is all about wealth confiscation, he's gotten pretty rich over the years. And you chronicle that in your best-selling new book, don't you?
That's right, Sean. He figured out one of the dirty secrets in Washington, D.C., which is you can make a lot of money acting as a media buyer for campaigns. You know, so if you were running for the Senate, Sean, and I was your media buyer, and you said spend $1 million on television ads, we would spend $1 million, but by industry standard, I would be entitled to a 15% fee out of that $1 million. So I'd be entitled to $150,000. And the great thing about this deal, Sean, is it would never be disclosed that I got the fee. It wouldn't show up anywhere in FEC records. Well, Bernie Sanders figured this out because what he did when he was in Congress and continued later on is he put his wife in charge of media buying. She actually set up a company with her son and daughter. It was registered to the Sanders home in Vermont. And they handled media buying for Bernie's campaign. We believe they made at least $150,000, if not more, doing that. But there's also evidence that Bernie leveraged his position to basically get other candidates to hire his wife. So what we found is a couple of candidates that were running in Vermont, they were actually longtime Bernie friends, were not getting endorsed by Bernie. One of them was running for governor, for example. They weren't getting Bernie's endorsement, and this was a big mystery, and the press was talking about why is Bernie not endorsing this person? Well, it turns out this candidate hires Jane Sanders to do their media buying, and within 2 weeks, Bernie suddenly endorses this candidate for governor of Vermont. So it's a shakedown operation, and this has continued up to his presidential campaign. It involves his nonprofit organizations. It involves the Sanders Institute. It's a major money-making scheme. He employs his kids. His wife has this side gig going on, and it's been a way of them funneling money, in some cases taxpayer money, to the Sanders family. So politics has made the Sanders very wealthy.
Well, pretty amazing when you look at all the money. So how many years in Washington and how much have they been able to accumulate wealth-wise? And you know, I always say liberals are always generous with other people's money. Why don't they use their own money? You know, they're going to lecture us on our SUVs and tell us we need to get rid of oil and gas. The first time in 75 frickin' years that we're energy independent, a net exporter of energy. The Straits of Hormuz mean less to us than they ever have before, which is good for our safety and security. And yet they would literally take over the oil and gas industry. That's how corrupt they are, but fly their private jet, of course.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, the energy revolution has just been remarkable for this country. And when you look at Bernie Sanders' finances, there's several things that stand out. Number one, for all of his talk of wanting to help the poor, he has a terrible record for actually giving to charities. Basically gives less than 1% of his income to charities. Second thing that stands out, Sean, is his investment portfolio. He has an investment portfolio. When Jane Sanders ran Burlington College, she ran it into the ground. They had a stock investment portfolio there. In both cases, they were not invested in, socially conscious corporations. They were invested in blue chip stocks with Fortune 500 companies. That's what Bernie invests in. So for all of his attacks on corporate America and how evil corporate profits are, that's where he's investing his dollars. And then the third thing that turns out that's interesting that turns out is that they have these homes. We know that they own 3 homes already. One of them is a vacation home. They actually put the vacation home into a tax shelter that's going to help them paying taxes if they want to change ownership in that asset. So there is rank hypocrisy from Bernie Sanders on all levels as it relates to what he's telling the country he believes, but what he thinks actually applies to himself and to his family.
All right, Peter Schweizer, great work.